Hey guys, how's it going? It is MyDifferentUsername here, and today we're going to be covering one of the most iconic submachine guns to have ever existed, and, as well, its respective machine pistol variants. But our first entry is a real classic. Here, we have the Mini-Uzi submachine gun made out of Lego. So, the Uzi, or just the shortened term that was given to the gun from the designer of the weapon, Uzi Al-Ghal, who in 1950 designed one of the first telescopic driving bolts to be used on submachine guns, and he created a design that significantly shortens the size of the entire weapon itself, which turned into what we now know as the original Uzi. Eventually, in 1954, the IDF took notice to the Uzi and implemented it as one of the main choices of weaponry for their elite infantry. And this weapon has been adopted by many countries and has seen multiple conflicts like the Suez Crisis, the Six-Day War, the Vietnam War, and still even sees use to this very day. So, to start off, I figured we could take a look at the grip of the weapon, which surprisingly carries over a lot of different functions. Functions including this fire selector here, which does slide into 3 different positions, and you can even see the 3 dots as well that represent these different fire modes. The right position being the safety, the middle being semi-automatic, and then the left being fully automatic. And to help create this, I used a sliding rail plate and rail brick, and to keep it all from falling out, I even added a little strip of tape on the back of the plate, which helps keep the whole thing together. And it's actually because of this design that the safety itself has no effect on the trigger whatsoever. Moving back, we can see the grip safety, which is used on the real model to prevent accidental firing of the weapon without any proper gripping. And my model itself doesn't actually feature that, but it does hold some tiny springs on the inside and is a nice representation of how the real weapon must be held in order to properly fire it. And down below reveals the magazine release for the Uzi, which is a typical heel-styled release that is only present on the left side and not the right. Unfortunately, this doesn't function like a real release system does, but it isn't necessary because just like most of my other weapons, the magazine usually fits nicely within the magwell with just friction alone holding it in place. And since we were kinda talking about it, I figured we could take another closer look at the magazine itself, and I gotta say, there's not really too much to show off except some of the few bumps that you can see on both sides of the mag, and even the bullet on top, which represents the 9mm ammo. But this magazine is unique in the amount of ammo that it can hold up to, which happens to be 32 rounds of ammo. And there are other magazines that hold different amounts of ammo, like this 25 round magazine here, and can even go as small as this 20 round magazine. Frankly, I find that the 32 round magazine suits Uzi very well, and honestly, I actually rather prefer this being the magazine of choice for this particular model right here. Now, onto the stock piece. This part of the weapon I honestly find to be very unique. I mean, really, there's not too many weapons with collapsible stocks that are just like the Uzis. And on the real model, it's an easy process to deploy and reset the stock piece, but on my model, it's actually quite the opposite. There are 3 pins in total that lock my stock into its shortened position, and once these pins are released, the stock unhinges itself into 2 different parts, one being the main part of the stock, and the other one acting as a locking arm. Once those have been deployed, the last 2 pins on the top lock down the whole stock, making a relatively nice hold for when firing this gun for longer range engagements. And the nice thing too is the fact that the sling mount is usable whether or not the stock is either deployed or retracted. And I will say, the retractable stock is useful for the sake of carrying out fire at long range and CQB, but it's been renowned as a very uncomfortable stock to use, and with that, sets up the reason to use the widely unknown wooden stock piece. This stock looks rather odd to some people, but it does come with a curved backplate and its own sling mount to complement the Uzis, and it definitely helps create a more comfortable experience while using, but with it also comes more weight in the back to worry about, as well as the inability to shorten the stock. There is also the option to just not have a stock at all, but it doesn't really feel right, so personally I like to just keep the retractable stock on the Uzi just so I can have both the options. Up next, we have my most favorite part of the build, which happens to be the bolt, and well, maybe you can see why. That's right, I was actually able to make the Uzi have an open bolt system and release the bolt via the trigger pull. So I will admit the system isn't perfect, and I actually do have to reset the bolt every time it is fired, and it's almost like as if I'm dry firing the actual gun itself. And how I made this system is, well, odd to say the least. There's no mechanical system built for this whatsoever, mostly because I couldn't really fit one. But instead, I just used a hairband. I know what you're thinking. Such revolutionary designing, but it honestly really works for the type of system that I built for the gun. Right here we have a typical rubber band that I'd normally use to make certain functions. It works well for most notable setups like charging handles and triggers, but it has a limit to how much tension it could actually handle until it eventually snaps. But what's interesting about a hairband is just the fact that it will not snap at all, and eventually it actually stops stretching completely and instead starts to pull itself. So, I wanted to implement this into my design, and with the use of this pin in the back of the gun, the bolt will lock into place when pulled back, but yet still have enough tension tied down to the trigger and pull the bolt forward when pressed down. And the charging handle is tied down to its own rubber band, allowing itself to slide forward after fully moving the bolt back. Either way, this makes a really nice play feature, and I'm so glad that I actually made this a part of my model. Another aspect I wanted to cover was the handguard for the Uzi. This was actually achieved using all of these individual 1x3 bow pieces, and what's nice is how the spacing of all the pieces together really give off a similar look towards how the original handguard looks. And what's also interesting about this is the fact that I've actually come up with another way to make an upside down technique for this Uzi. Instead of using the Technic pins, I instead opted out for the bricks that use the studs along the sides of them, and what's great about this is just the fact that it creates a clean way of creating upside down techniques versus just using a whole bunch of Technic pins. Also, the front contains the takedown pin, the barrel shroud, and even under that, the lug piece that's used to mount bayonets onto the Uzi. The last thing to cover on this model are the sights, which really don't have much to them but are still very much needed for a weapon such as this. Here we have the front post sight, the adjustable rear sight, and the charging handle, which is actually purposefully cut down through the center to allow complete viewing access of both of the sights. And as said earlier, the rear sight is adjustable to represent how the real gun has two different range findings, and I even achieved this aspect by making one of the apertures slightly smaller than the other by fitting a 1x1 stud with a hole through the center. And with the ears surrounding both the front sight and the rear sight, I gotta say, it really just helps create that iconic look that most people remember instantly whenever they think of the Uzi. So, overall, I really enjoyed building this. It just felt great to take a weapon that I've made from the past and really challenge myself to see if I could just do a better job on it now, and I really truly believe I did a great job for this one, and hopefully you guys feel the same way as well. And also, in the last video, so many people said that they actually really enjoyed the shooting aspect of the videos, so I figured I'd bring it back here as well too. So, with that said, let's shoot it. So, I'll admit that that was a lot of stuff to take in, but I'm actually not quite done yet. When I did build the Uzi, I thought that it would be pretty unfair to just build that one alone, so I figured why not build the other two variants as well, starting off with the LEGO Mini-Uzi. So, the Mini-Uzi is the variant to the original Uzi and was introduced around the year of 1980, and the weapon's sole purpose was just to really carry out the exact same job as the Uzi did, but have its length shortened. That's pretty much it. But its new shortened length actually brings out a few new features towards the Uzi family. The original Uzi size was around 18.5 inches on its own, and this version of it actually gets cut down to the length of around 14 inches, which is very much surprising because now the gun is practically the size of the Uzi's wooden stock piece. What's also interesting is just the fact that since the length of the weapon has been shortened, so has the bolt, and what this ends up doing is increasing the cyclic rate of fire for the Mini-Uzi up to around 950 rounds per minute, beating out the original Uzi's 600 rounds per minute. Other features for the Mini-Uzi include a new stock as well, opting out the collapsible stock for a more convenient side folding stock. With this stock attached, it makes deploying and resetting the stock a lot more of a breeze than having to deal with all the pins of the Uzi's metal stock, whereas with this, you practically swing it out and it will be ready to go. What's also cool is the pin technique that's used on this stock. It basically allows the stock to push out the pin and then lock the whole thing down once it's been properly aligned. And to reset it, all you have to do is simply pull out the pin and it releases the stock all on its own. Other features to the Mini-Uzi are features that were actually included in the original Uzi as well, but mostly have different sizes to them. Besides that, practically everything on this gun is just like the Uzi, and also with the gun, I figured it would be a lot more appropriate to use the 25 round magazine rather than using the other mag. So, in conclusion, the Mini-Uzi definitely holds its own end of the family line up as being an extremely iconic gun to stand up on its own. And I do remember finally using this gun a lot in Call of Duty 4 just because of how cool it looked and how effective it was at taking enemies down. So I figured, why not just relive those memories again and test this out. So, that was the LEGO Mini-Uzi. Pretty nice gun to say the least, but it actually doesn't end here. There is one last variant in the Uzi family to cover, and this gun practically takes it one step forward from the Mini-Uzi. And here, we have the LEGO Micro-Uzi. So, the Micro-Uzi. Just when you thought the Uzi design couldn't get any smaller, it just does, and very effectively well too. In 1986, it really places itself as one of the best choices of CQB weapons to use, and has done so well throughout military history that there is even a more modernized version of this model called the IWI Micro-Uzi Pro, which is used prominently by the Israeli Special Forces to this very day. The Micro-Uzi definitely takes its length to the next level and can run at a length of only 11 inches. And just like the Mini-Uzi, when you cut the length down, it decreases the bolt traveling distance, meaning having an even higher rate of fire, and the Micro-Uzi can actually shoot up to 1,250 rounds per minute, which really doesn't last too long when it's only equipped with its 20 round magazine. It's even crazy to believe that this model also doesn't fire from an open bolt, but instead from a closed bolt, meaning that the bolt doesn't lock back when charged, but instead locks forward and chambers around before firing. And besides the cut down length and lightweight balance, this model actually provides some newer features towards the Uzi family, like the new trim along the back that is more of a slant and less of a rounded grip. This model even has a different style trigger guard as well, which I will honestly admit looks really cool. And it even has newly designed sights as well, which must be great for acquiring targets at short range, because now that the gun has a closed bolt design, it's actually easier to fire at targets at range and not have to worry about your aim being thrown off by the downward bolt travel that is actually present on the open bolt designs of the Uzi and Mini-Uzi. Besides all that, the weapon still features the same fire selector, the lug mount piece in the front, and even the same folding stock that was made originally for the Mini-Uzi. So, overall, I just gotta say that this is probably easily my most favorite model out of all the Uzis so far, simply because of its sleek design and low weight, while also delivering an insane amount of firepower all at the same time. And when it comes to this gun, I think it's pretty easy to say that, size doesn't matter. Okay, alright, that hurt me more than it hurt you guys, okay? Jeez. Let's just finally shoot this thing already. And just like that, that was the entirety of the Uzi family in LEGO form. This turned out to be actually a lot longer than I thought, so hopefully this doesn't upset anyone, especially since this did take a lot of work to make. Mostly because of the lack of pieces and extra time, and each of these guns had to be filmed at different times to actually even make this video work out completely. Regardless though, I definitely hope it was all worth the wait. Also, I have some bad news, but due to some problems lately with the possible improper reselling of my LEGO weapon designs, I'm gonna actually hold off on just giving out the LDD file for the LEGO Uzis and even my other creations in the meantime, so I really do apologize for that. Maybe if I come up with a solution sometime in the future that helps stops this problem, I could definitely bring the files back. But until then guys, if you want to stay up to date with what's going to happen with the LDD files later in the future, you should definitely check me out on Facebook and Twitter, or you guys could just check the description of my videos just to see if any updates happen to pop up. Either way, subscribe if you guys want to see more epic LEGO creations made later in the future, like, favorite, and comment if you guys have enjoyed, and, as always, thanks for watching.